My name is Jenna Miller. I'm 18 years old, and I come from the kind of family that looks respectable in public, but rots quietly behind closed doors. We live in Maplewood, a small town in Ohio where everybody knows your name and your business. My father, Robert Miller, likes to pretend we're a legacy family, pillars of tradition, discipline, and moral values. What he really means is control. My older sister, Victoria Miller, is 25. In my parents' eyes, she was born royalty, the first child, the heir to whatever imaginary throne my father believes he built in this town. Victoria grew up wrapped in silk and praise, designer dresses for school dances, spa days before prom. Private voice lessons she quit after 3 months because the teacher didn't appreciate her talent. She never had to earn anything. I did. When I turned 12, I asked for a birthday party. That was the day my childhood ended. Dad sat me down at the kitchen table, hands folded like he was delivering a sermon. "You're becoming a young woman, Jenna," he said. "It's time you start proving your worth." Proving my worth. I didn't understand what that meant at 12. I just knew it meant no birthday party, no cake with friends, no sleepover. Instead, he handed me a list of neighbors who might need help. That's how I started working. At first, it was small things: walking Mrs. Henderson's golden retriever, Max, feeding the Johnsons' tabby cat, Whiskers, when they went out of town, pulling weeds for the Thompsons down the street. I told myself it was temporary. It wasn't. Every weekend became booked. Every summer was scheduled around other people's needs. While Victoria was posting beach photos and posing in boutique dresses my parents paid for, I was waking up at 6 a.m. to clean kennels and refill water bowls. The worst part? They praised me for it. "You're so mature," Mom would say, smiling like she'd raised a prodigy. Dad would nod approvingly. "See? Hard work builds character." But they never once offered to match what I earned, never asked what I planned to do with it. They only checked my room to make sure I wasn't wasting it on something irresponsible. I saved everything. I kept spreadsheets. I opened my own savings account the minute I legally could. I tracked every dollar like it was oxygen, because in my head, there was a finish line: college. I believed if I worked hard enough, saved enough, stayed disciplined enough, they would finally look at me the way they looked at Victoria, like I mattered. Meanwhile, Victoria's life was curated for her. My parents drilled into her that her job was simple: stay beautiful and marry well. No chores, no part-time job, no expectations beyond maintaining her appearance. I remember one night when she was 16 and had the flu. Pale, exhausted, barely able to stand. Dad had a business dinner that evening. Instead of letting her rest, Mom insisted she put on makeup. "A normal Victoria is worse than a sick Victoria who looks presentable," she said while curling her hair. Even then, I knew something was wrong. Victoria learned that her value lived in mirrors and men's approval. I learned mine lived in labor. Her first marriage happened when she was 20. Dad arranged it. A family friend's son, Connor Walsh, 28, polished, wealthy, predictable. The wedding looked like something out of a magazine. White roses everywhere. A venue that probably cost more than our house. Victoria glowed under the lights, convinced she'd secured her happily ever after. It lasted 1 year. I was 13 when they divorced. Old enough to hear whispered arguments through bedroom walls. Old enough to see Dad's tight jaw when Connor's father still shook his hand in public. From what I pieced together, Connor got tired of being married to someone who didn't know how to function without applause. Victoria came home dramatic and shattered. And my parents? They didn't ask what she could learn from it. They blamed Connor. They blamed stress. They blamed modern men who don't appreciate traditional women. They never blamed themselves. And they certainly never expected Victoria to change. I should have known then. In our house, consequences were optional, as long as you were the right child. I kept working. I kept saving. Because somewhere deep down, I still believed effort would eventually equal love. I was wrong. I just didn't know it yet. Victoria's second marriage happened so fast, it felt like a rebound disguised as redemption. She was 23 when she met Brandon Hayes. He owned multiple car dealerships in Columbus. Flashy suits, louder laugh than necessary. The kind of man who tipped extravagantly in restaurants just to make sure everyone noticed. Even I could tell something about him felt off. But Victoria didn't care. He had money. He had status. And most importantly, he had the ability to erase the embarrassment of her first divorce. The wedding was smaller than the first. Dad claimed he wanted to keep it intimate, but it still cost a ridiculous amount. Victoria wore a custom gown. Brandon gifted her a diamond bracelet that probably cost more than my entire savings account at the time. I remember standing in the corner of the reception hall, checking pet sitting messages on my phone between forced smiles. I had 3 dogs scheduled the next morning. Victoria had a honeymoon in Aruba. That was the difference between us. For a while, she looked happy, or at least well photographed. But cracks started showing quickly. Brandon cheated constantly. Everyone knew it. Even our parents, who usually worshipped wealth, couldn't ignore the rumors forever. Victoria would show up at family dinners wearing a new necklace or ring after each scandal, insisting they were just misunderstandings. "He loves me," she'd say, chin lifted defensively. What she meant was, I can't survive another failed marriage. But the decision was eventually made for her. Brandon got his secretary pregnant. He left Victoria for her. No dramatic confrontation, no noble apology, just legal papers and silence. And suddenly, at 25, Victoria was back in her old bedroom, twice divorced, no degree, no job, no plan. The house felt heavier after that. Dad became short-tempered. Mom hovered around Victoria like she was made of glass. Sophia, my 14-year-old little sister, stayed quiet, watching everything with wide, observant eyes. Sophia is the only person in that house I've ever loved without complication. She's kind, grounded, nothing like Victoria. And I was terrified they'd eventually turn her into another version of our oldest sister. That spring, something happened that I'd been working toward for 6 years. I got accepted into Ohio State University. Full academic scholarship, tuition, books, everything covered. When I opened the email in the school library, I actually had to sit down because my knees felt weak. 6 years of early mornings. 6 years of balancing straight A's with weekend shifts. 6 years of proving myself. I ran home with the printed acceptance letter clutched in my hand, like it might disappear if I loosened my grip. Dad was in the living room when I burst through the door. I got in, I said breathless. Full ride. For a moment, just one fleeting, fragile moment, his face softened. He stood up and took the letter from me, scanning it slowly. "You've worked incredibly hard for this, Jenna," he said, and something inside me bloomed. Recognition. Mom hugged me tightly. Even Victoria glanced up from her phone and muttered, "Congrats." I thought this was it, the turning point, proof that discipline meant something. But then Dad cleared his throat. "Well," he said casually, handing the paper back to me, "since tuition is covered, you'll just need to get a job to handle living expenses." The bloom inside me withered instantly. "I've been working for 6 years," I said carefully. "I thought maybe with the scholarship I could focus on school, join clubs, maybe just be a student." He gave me that smile, the patronizing one. "Life doesn't pause for comfort, Jenna. This is how character is built." Character. The word tasted bitter now. "What about the money I saved?" I asked. "I thought maybe you'd help with rent or food since I proved I'm responsible." That's when he hesitated. A flicker passed between him and Mom, and my stomach dropped. "Actually," Dad began, voice measured, "we need to talk about your savings." The air shifted. "Victoria is going through a very difficult time," Mom said gently, as if she were explaining something obvious. "Her confidence is shattered. She believes her marriage has failed because she wasn't attractive enough." I stared at her. "A little cosmetic work could really help her feel better," Mom continued. "Boost her chances at finding someone stable." The words didn't process at first. "You want my savings," I said slowly. "For plastic surgery?" Dad nodded once. You're set with your scholarship. This is your opportunity to support your family. Support my family. 6 years of saving. 6 years of sacrifice. And they wanted to hand it over so Victoria could get a nose job and maybe a confidence boost. I felt something crack inside my chest. Are you serious? I whispered. Watch your tone, Dad snapped. Where was the warning about tone when Victoria screamed at waiters? When she maxed out credit cards? When she came home crying because another husband had left? You're asking me to give up my entire savings, I said, voice rising, so she can fix her face? Mom's expression hardened. This isn't about vanity. It's about helping your sister recover. Recover from consequences she never learned to handle. The room felt smaller, suffocating. For the first time in my life, I saw it clearly. No matter what I achieved, no matter how hard I worked, I would always be the resource, and Victoria would always be the investment. That was the moment hope died, and something far more dangerous was born. I don't remember standing up. I just remember the sound of my own heartbeat, loud, violent, echoing in my ears like something was breaking inside me. You want my entire savings, I repeated slowly, staring at my father. Every dollar I've earned since I was 12? For Victoria's cosmetic surgery? Dad crossed his arms. Don't dramatize it. You'll still have your scholarship. I actually laughed. A sharp, humorless sound that didn't feel like it belonged to me. I worked weekends. I missed birthday parties. I skipped school trips because I couldn't afford to not take a booking. And you want to take that money so she can get a nose job? It's not just a nose job, Mom snapped. It's about her future. What about mine? The question came out raw. No one answered. Victoria had been silent until then, sitting curled on the couch like a wounded princess. Now she straightened. I never asked for this, she said defensively. But she didn't say no. She didn't say don't take it. She didn't say this is wrong. She just sat there, waiting to see if I would hand it over like I always had. My time, my effort, my childhood. Dad's voice hardened. Family supports each other. You're in a position to help. Don't be selfish. Selfish. That word hit harder than anything else. Selfish, I whispered. I've been working since I was 12, while she's been getting manicures and wedding planners. Victoria had different expectations placed on her, Mom argued. Yes, I shot back. The expectation to look pretty and marry rich. Victoria stood up. You think my life has been easy? She demanded. Do you know how humiliating it is to get divorced twice? To have everyone whispering? Do you know how humiliating it is? I fired back. To be treated like hired help in your own house? Silence. Thick. Heavy. Dangerous. Dad stepped closer to me. This is your chance to show maturity, he said quietly. To be the bigger person. Something inside me snapped. I have been the bigger person my entire life. My voice was shaking now, but I didn't care. You made me earn your approval like it was a paycheck. You made me prove I deserved basic support. And now that I've finally accomplished something real, you're trying to take it away. Mom's eyes filled with frustrated tears. Why can't you just do this one thing for your sister? Because it will never be just one thing, I shouted. Sophia had been standing in the hallway, frozen. I saw her flinch. Victoria crossed her arms. You're being dramatic. That did it. Dramatic, I said, stepping toward her. You've had 2 fully funded weddings, 2 husbands, 2 chances to build a life, and you're still here. And now you want my money to try again? Her face turned red. You think you're better than me because you got a scholarship? No, I said quietly. I think I'm tired. Tired of earning love. Tired of being compared. Tired of watching my sister fail upward while I clawed for scraps of recognition. Dad slammed his hand on the dining table. Enough. His voice boomed through the house. You will transfer that money. We are your parents. You owe this family. Oh. The word echoed in my chest like a verdict. And suddenly, everything became clear. It was never about character. It was never about responsibility. It was about control. They never cared that I worked. They cared that I obeyed. I felt strangely calm. You want to talk about family? I said softly. Dad looked irritated. What now? Let me show you what I've learned about family. I turned and walked down the hallway. I heard Mom calling my name. Heard Victoria muttering something about ungrateful children. I didn't stop. I locked my bedroom door and collapsed on my bed. For a few minutes, I just stared at the ceiling. 6 years. 6 years of believing effort would eventually equal love. I thought about the savings account, every deposit, every early morning, every dog walked in freezing rain, every summer afternoon spent cleaning instead of laughing with friends. And I realized something devastating. If I handed that money over, it wouldn't fix Victoria. It would confirm what they believed about me, that I existed to serve. My phone lay on my desk. And then I remembered someone. Grandpa Joe, Dad's father. He lived about an hour away in a retirement community in Springfield. Every time he visited, he asked about my grades, about my work, about my plans. He looked at me like I mattered, not like I was a resource. I hesitated. Family problems are supposed to stay inside the family, right? But hadn't they already broken that rule by rewriting the truth? Because I knew something else now. They'd been telling people I chose to work, that they'd tried to stop me, that I was just independent. My stomach twisted. With shaking fingers, I dialed his number. He answered on the third ring. Jenna? Everything okay, sweetheart? The warmth in his voice nearly broke me. No, I whispered. It's not. And then I told him everything. The work at 12, the weddings, the scholarship, the demand for my savings. I didn't soften it. I didn't protect anyone. When I finished, there was silence on the other end. Then I heard him exhale slowly. Pack a bag, he said. My breath caught. What? I'll be there tomorrow morning, he continued. Voice steady, but cold in a way I'd never heard before. It's time we have a family meeting. Something shifted inside me. For the first time since that argument started, I didn't feel powerless. I felt supported, and I had no idea that the next 24 hours were about to change our entire family forever. Grandpa Joe arrived the next morning in his black Cadillac Escalade, like a storm rolling in over flat Ohio fields. He didn't honk. He didn't call ahead. He just walked up to the front door and let himself in with the spare key he'd kept for years. I was already waiting downstairs with an overnight bag beside me. Dad looked up from his coffee, confused. Mom froze mid-step in the kitchen. Victoria was sprawled across the couch in leggings and an oversized sweatshirt, scrolling through her phone. Family meeting, Grandpa Joe said calmly. Living room. Now. There was something in his tone that made everyone obey, even Victoria. He didn't sit at first. He stood in front of the fireplace, hands clasped behind his back, like a general assessing his troops. Let's start simple, he said. Victoria, tell me about your college plans. Victoria blinked. What? Your college plans, he repeated. What degree are you pursuing? Silence. Dad cleared his throat. Dad, that's not relevant. It's relevant to me. Victoria shifted uncomfortably. I didn't think college was necessary. Grandpa Joe nodded slowly. Interesting. Then he turned to me. And you, Jenna? I swallowed. I was accepted to Ohio State. Full academic scholarship. A flicker of pride crossed his face. And how are you paying for living expenses? The air thickened. I glanced at Dad. He's not helping, I said quietly. And they asked me to give my savings to Victoria for cosmetic surgery. The silence that followed felt like a vacuum sucking the oxygen out of the room. Grandpa Joe didn't look at me. He looked at my father. Is that true? Dad's jaw tightened. Victoria is going through a hard time. That wasn't my question. Another long pause. Yes, Dad finally admitted. Grandpa Joe's hand slammed down on the coffee table so hard that Mom's decorative candle toppled sideways. You thought it was appropriate, he said, voice dangerously calm. To take money from a child who's worked since she was 12? To fund elective cosmetic surgery for a grown woman? Victoria jumped up. I never demanded it. You didn't refuse it either, Grandpa Joe said sharply. She sat back down. I had never seen anyone silence her like that. Grandpa Joe turned back to Dad. You've been telling people Jenna chose to work? Dad's face drained of color. We never forced her. She was 12. The words landed like a gavel. Mom tried to interject. We were teaching responsibility. You were teaching conditional love. The room went still. Even Sophia, standing quietly near the hallway, looked like she was holding her breath. Grandpa Joe walked slowly toward the window, staring out at the yard as if steadying himself. When I built my construction company, he said quietly, I swore I would raise a son who understood fairness. He turned back around. Clearly, I failed. Dad looked like he'd been slapped. Dad, I had planned, Grandpa Joe continued, ignoring him, to leave my estate equally divided among my 3 grandchildren. Victoria's eyes lit up immediately. That's $300,000, he said. $100,000 each. My heart skipped. I had no idea he had that kind of money. But then his expression hardened. However, after what I've witnessed, I'm revising that plan. Dad stepped forward. You can't just, I can do whatever I please with my own money. His voice cracked like thunder. Victoria will receive $30,000. Victoria shot to her feet. What? The remaining $270,000, he continued calmly, will be split between Jenna and Sophia. $135,000 each. I couldn't breathe. Sophia's hand flew to her mouth. Victoria stared at him like he'd betrayed her personally. That's not fair, she shrieked. I'm the oldest. I deserve more. Grandpa Joe's gaze turned icy. Fair? He repeated. Let's discuss fair. He began counting on his fingers. Jenna has worked since she was 12. Victoria has not. Jenna earned a full scholarship. Victoria did not pursue higher education. Jenna demonstrated discipline. Victoria had 2 marriages funded by her parents. Victoria's face flushed red. You're punishing me. No, he said firmly. I am correcting imbalance. Then he turned to Dad. And as for you, Dad stiffened. You will receive nothing. Mom gasped. You're cutting us out? She whispered. Yes. Dad's voice trembled with anger. You're destroying this family. No, Grandpa Joe said evenly. You did that. Mom's eyes filled with tears. This is humiliating. Humiliation is temporary, he replied. Character damage lasts generations. Victoria began crying. Not sad tears, but furious ones. This is Jenna's fault, she snapped. She manipulated you. I felt heat rise in my chest, but Grandpa Joe spoke before I could. If your sister's honesty feels like manipulation, that says more about you than her. Dad looked desperate now. Dad, please, we can fix this. You've had 18 years to fix this. Silence. Heavy. Final. Grandpa Joe pulled out his phone. I'm calling my lawyer Monday morning. This is done. Victoria stormed out of the room. Mom sank into a chair. Dad just stood there, stunned. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't invisible. I wasn't the resource. I wasn't the child expected to sacrifice quietly. I was seen. As Grandpa Joe placed a steady hand on my shoulder, I realized something profound. This wasn't just about money. It was about consequences. And consequences had finally arrived in our house. The house didn't feel the same after that meeting. It felt rearranged. Not physically. Power had shifted. For the first few days, it was chaos. Victoria slammed doors, cried loudly on purpose, and accused me of ruining her future. She told anyone who would listen that I had exaggerated the situation to Grandpa Joe. I never wanted her money, she insisted one evening at dinner, but she never once said she would refuse it. Dad stopped speaking to me altogether. Mom tried a different strategy. She cornered me in the kitchen 2 days after the announcement, voice soft and wounded. You know your grandfather is overreacting, she said. You could fix this. Just tell him you forgive us. Forgive. The word felt manipulative now. Forgive you for what? I asked calmly. Her lips pressed thin. For misunderstanding our intentions. I almost smiled. There it was. Even now, there was no accountability, only reframing. Sophia, on the other hand, avoided the tension altogether. She'd come sit on my bed at night, cross-legged, quiet. One evening, she looked at me and whispered, I don't want the money if it hurts you. My chest tightened. It doesn't hurt me, I said gently. It protects you. She frowned. From what? From becoming invisible. She didn't fully understand, but she would. Over the next few weeks, the family dynamic twisted itself into something unrecognizable. Suddenly, I was interesting. Victoria started asking about Ohio State, pretending to be curious about dorm life, about majors. Dad tried to make small talk at breakfast. Awkward. Forced. Mom suggested family movie nights, like we were suddenly close-knit and wholesome. It was transparent. They weren't trying to fix the damage. They were trying to repair their image with Grandpa Joe, and I saw it clearly now. For 18 years, I'd mistaken performance for love. By August, the tension had settled into something quieter, but no less fragile. The morning I left for Ohio State, the sky was clear and painfully bright. Sophia cried first. She hugged me so tightly I could feel her shaking. "Call me every day," she demanded. "I will." Dad hovered near the driveway but didn't say much. Mom kissed my cheek and whispered, "Don't forget where you came from," I almost replied. But I didn't, because I finally understood something important. Where I came from wasn't something I owed. It was something I survived. Grandpa Joe drove me to campus himself. He refused to let me touch a single box when we moved my things into the dorm. "Save your strength," he said. "You've carried enough already." When everything was unpacked, he handed me an envelope. Inside was a copy of the revised will paperwork. "It's official," he said simply. I looked up at him. "You didn't have to do that." "Yes," he replied gently. "I did." We sat on the edge of my new dorm bed. "You know that money isn't a reward," he added. "It's leverage, opportunity. Don't waste it trying to prove anything to anyone." I nodded. "I won't." He studied me carefully. "For years you thought working harder would earn love," he said. "But love isn't earned through exhaustion." His words settled deep inside me. After he left, I stood alone in my dorm room. For the first time in my life, I didn't have a shift scheduled. I didn't have a dog to walk. I didn't have to justify my existence. I joined the pre-veterinary program within the first week, signed up for clubs, went to a football game with girls who laughed easily and didn't look tired all the time. I learned what it felt like to be 18, not 12 going on 30. Victoria is still at home, still convinced the world owes her something. Dad has started being noticeably kinder to Sophia. Whether out of growth or fear of losing more inheritance, I honestly don't know. But I know this: I am no longer waiting for approval that will never come. Sometimes people confuse sacrifice with loyalty. Sometimes they mistake obedience for love. But love doesn't demand you hand over your future so someone else can fix their reflection. The money Grandpa Joe left isn't what saved me. What saved me was realizing I didn't need to earn my right to exist. And sometimes the only family you truly need is the one who sees you clearly. For me, that was my grandfather and my little sister. And for the first time in 18 years, that was enough.